Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this deep dive into digital marketing. I'm Tim Robinson. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Tech East, and we're really pleased to be back with you all. This is the second deep dive session that we've run this year. The first was on SEO, and both of these sessions have come off the back of two conferences we ran earlier in 2020. One, Tourism and Tech, for the visitor economy sector, and the second conference was Rise, which was for food and drink producers. So great to see delegates from both of those conferences returning, some new faces as well, and we hope that this morning's session will provide you with some really practical tools on a topic that was very kind of highly asked for, very much at the top of the list, which was digital marketing. And under the current circumstances of the second lockdown, more than ever, I think this question of how to create an audience for your business online, how to connect with existing customers, how to find new customers, and how to really sort of maximize what you can do with low-cost digital marketing tools is more important than ever. So we've got a full 90-minute session for you this morning. We're pleased to be bringing this conference to you in partnership with Norfolk County Council again, with New Anglia Local Enterprise Partnership, Norfolk Chambers of Commerce, and Local Flavours. So the focus is very much on SMEs and micro businesses in the east of England. We've got lots of examples for you this morning from both the visitor economy and food and drink sectors, but hopefully, as Edwina, when I introduce her in a moment, will show you, we've got lots of examples that apply to any kind of business. So please do introduce yourself in the chat. Please do respond to the polls if you haven't already. I think we've got 4 polls for you. And just in a very short space of time, I'll be introducing our guest speaker this morning. We will then have about an hour on kind of deep dive into digital marketing. We then have an opportunity for a Q&A and a discussion with Edwina, our guest speaker, who's an expert in this field, and we'll be very happy to answer any of your questions. So please use the Q&A function to ask any questions. And then finally, we'll be hearing from Kate DeVries from Norfolk County Council about a new program called Go Digital, which is intended to build on this thirst and this desire for more information and more support and business support on digital marketing and all things digital. But Kate will talk a bit more about that in about an hour's time. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Edwina Mullins. Edwina, will you switch your video on, please?
Nothing like a delay.
Nothing like a delay, and we can hear you loud and clear. Well, good morning, Edwina.
Good morning. How are you, Tim?
I'm fine, thanks, and it's very good to have you back. For anyone who went to the Rise conference, gosh, when was that? 6 weeks ago, or something like that. It feels like ages ago, but I think it was only the beginning of September. Anyone who's at Rise will remember Edwina's high energy, high content, high impact presentation on digital marketing, and I think there was a real sense from delegates to that conference that we wanted to be hearing more from you. So Edwina Mullins is an expert on digital marketing and is from Social B, but I will ask you perhaps, Edwina, to introduce yourself properly, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen. Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm just going to share my PowerPoint now. If someone could just let me know that they can definitely see it, that would be wonderful.
I can see that fine.
Wonderful, thank you very much, Tim. So yes, last time it was a whistle-stop tour into content marketing and engaging communities. And today we're going to be having a slightly longer talk, but still quite rapid deep dive into digital marketing. There are still some polls going through, so have a check of those polls. Make sure you filled in everything. And if you have any questions throughout this presentation, please do use the chat, and I'll be happy to answer at the end. If I might be able to get some time during, but if not, it'll be at the end. My name is Edwina Mullins, as you know. I'm from a company called Social Bee. We're a digital marketing agency based in Norwich and Norfolk. Generally, we're quite well spread at the moment, as we all are working from our home offices. And I'm based in Cambridge, actually. So we're sort of spread down the A11 corridor. So my background is digital marketing. I've been in marketing for about 20 years. And for the last 5 or so, I've been coaching people through Social Bee of how to implement digital marketing plans, content marketing strategies, and some of the tech behind digital marketing. My background is hospitality and tourism, but living in the Cambridge tech corridor, there's quite a lot of other businesses that I've got to know. So feel free to ask me questions about digital marketing, but they're more valuable for you if you ask specific questions about your industry. So feel free to get really specific about what you really want to know in the questions, then you'll get a better answer from me in the end. Now, these slides are going to be sent round to you afterwards. So some of them are quite heavy, and that's because they can be used as a reference for you at the end. So we've got some exercises throughout, and you'll see by the fact that there are gaps in some of the slides that you can print out these slides afterwards, and then you can fill in the gaps yourself. In the meantime, if you have a pen and paper handy, that would be great, because I'm going to give you a couple of 1-2 minute exercises to keep the brain ticking over the next hour, and it would be great if you can write things down and perhaps share in the chat as well. For those of you that were in the RISE conference, you'll know that it's quite nice to have some chat going, and you can learn from some of your other attendees in this event, some of the other delegates, what pain points are, and sometimes just knowing that other people have the same pain points as you is a calming experience, because you know that you're not alone. Okay, without further ado, I will crack on with the presentation. So Social Bee, I mentioned who we are. We work with a lot of different companies, not just food, drink and tourism. We work across a lot of sectors. So there's a lot of logos that we're very proud of. So digital marketing channels. I'm just going to move my, I've got a little pop-up window with your faces in. I'm just going to minimize that because that's going to be distracting throughout the presentation. Okay, so digital marketing channels. Whether you have an existing digital marketing strategy or you're thinking about going into digital for the first time, it's a good idea to reflect on all the different elements of digital marketing to make sure you're making the right decisions about which elements are right for you. You can think on it a bit like a pick a mix. Pick the bits that seem right for your business and make an educated decision about what fits. It might be that if you have one particular type of B2C company, business to consumer company, something fits for you. If you have a business to business company, a different strategy works better for that kind of company. So there isn't a broad brush, this system works for everyone. You have to tweak digital marketing plans so they work for you, and more importantly, they work for your customers. So at the core of digital marketing is your website. And whether you've got a lovely website or whether you've got a slightly older website, I would encourage you to have a look every so often and just make sure it's working as hard as it possibly can. And that's really the core of everything. And I'll go into a bit more detail a bit later. And then around this pie chart, you can see you've got digital strategy up at the top. Strategy sounds quite big, and as I've said before in other conferences, it doesn't need to be a 20, 30 page document. For some businesses, 1 or 2 pages just to align your thinking and make you focused is enough. So think about a digital plan and what you really want to achieve, and we'll go into objectives a little bit later. Then you've got social media, email marketing, paid advertising, conversion rate, so converting people, whether that's on your website, social media, you want to convert them ultimately to purchase your product or to give you a call. And then you've got search engine optimization, SEO. And then around that, you've got analytics, because as boring as analytics can be, or as time consuming as they can be, they are important to know whether you're doing the right thing or not. So this slide is really helpful to just give you an overall picture of the different elements that you should be thinking about. And then you can cross out the ones that are not right for you. You could say paid advertising, I'm not ready yet, or paid advertising absolutely is the kind of thing that I should be involved with. Now, I'm not going to go into SEO today because there was an SEO deep dive previously, and I'm not going to go into paid either because that is a big beast of a subject which would take up a lot of this time. But I'm going to go into the organic elements of digital marketing today. This is the digital marketing that will set you up for long-term customer relationships that will hopefully feed your business over the next couple of years. And then when you have the foundations of your organic business, i.e. the types of digital marketing that you can do yourself without having to pay for advertising, you can then go on to paid advertising. You can use your knowledge to go into paid. And obviously, if you have any questions about paid advertising, feel free to put them in the chat and I can answer them. So the most important thing you need to do right at the start is lay the foundations. What are your objectives? Now, some people's objectives, if you've got a new business, is brand awareness. I just need to let people know that my business exists. For other people, it might be I need to up my sales. People already know about me, but I need to up my sales in the run up to Christmas. For others, it might be that their business has had to completely pivot over the last year, and they've got a different set of objectives. So everyone is different. But if you don't have those objectives, and they should really be SMART objectives, then it's really hard to know whether you're successful in your digital strategy or not. So SMART objectives, that's the acronym. Most people know you've got specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And so it's good to have a look at what your objectives are. And for digital marketing, they need to align to your business objectives. So do you want to grow your business by 5% in 2021 or 20% in 2021? In which case, how is digital marketing going to affect that business goal? Because if your digital marketing isn't aligned and integrated with your business goals, it's quite easy for it to drop off and not feel relevant. So we're going to go straight into a 2-minute exercise. I've got 5 questions on the left-hand side of this table. And I want you to think about what your answers are to these questions. And if you don't know what the answers are by the end of the session, I would say, then you're not ready to start digital marketing. You need to reflect on these questions, because these overall objectives are going to inform what you do in social media, digital marketing, email marketing. And they are, who do you want to connect with? What content do you want to share? What do you want to tell people? How will you interact with people? How often you need to interact with people? Is it twice a day? Is it twice a week? Is it twice an hour? And how do you want to influence people to act? Do you want them to click a button, give you a call? What's that call to action? So you've got 2 minutes, and feel free to write it down on a piece of paper. Feel free to answer it in the chat as well, and that's quite helpful for other delegates today. So just quickly reflect, and you've got 2 minutes starting from now.
We should probably have some countdown music here, Edwina, shouldn't we?
I will be talking because it's quite hard to not talk for 2 minutes during a webinar. There is a link to the SEO deep dive in the chat box. So if you didn't catch the SEO deep dive that I mentioned earlier, there's a YouTube link in the chat. Don't click on it now, though. Wait for an hour and a bit. So if you're thinking about who you want to connect with, think about multiple stakeholders. Don't think about just one audience. Who are all the different people that are interested in your business? And the content, what's important to your business that you want to communicate? And then when you're thinking about how you will interact with people, are you professional? Are you professional yet friendly? Are you somebody that's very visual? Are you a business that's very visual? So you need to communicate your message through videos and images. How often you need to interact with people? Will people be really desperate to know about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? Or do they just need little reminders of what your products are or your services are every so often? So think about need of your audience as well, in terms of that regularity of content. And then the how you want to influence people to act is possibly one of the hardest ones, because that actually involves that your audience responding back to you, of course, which is the ultimate goal, but it's the hardest thing to achieve. You've got about 30 seconds left. So what I would like you to do when you've finished this course, this session, and you've got the slides back, come back to this exercise, because 2 minutes is obviously not enough to do it properly. But sometimes when you think spontaneously and you're just writing things down really quickly, actually you get a little brainwave that you wouldn't get if you're thinking things through in a slower, more methodical way. So sometimes just thinking spur of the moment can just can get something slightly different. Okay, your time is up. So the first thing that you need to think about after you've done your objectives is to identify your audience. So that's the who you want to connect with. So once you've identified your audience, you can judge where they're going to be online, and then you know where you should be. If your audience is not on social media, you don't need to be on social media. If your audience isn't going to open an email, you don't need to email them. So this is why it's really important to identify your audience and work out what that makeup is. It's a sort of jigsaw puzzle of different demographics. And then you can work out what you need to do to satisfy that audience. And then you're not doing a blanket approach, it's targeted, which means it'll take you less time and your time will be more relevant. So when you're identifying your audience, think about who you want to engage with and the demographics. It might be that you've got parents, you've got teenagers, you might have the silver surfers, the retired people, that is, you might have business professionals, you might have people that live in a city, you might have people that live in a rural area. And so think about who those people are and what they might want to get from you. And then if you've got that written down, you can think about those those people as you are putting your content strategy together. So straight into another exercise. I'm not going to let you just sit back and listen in this session, I'm afraid. You really need to get involved. So who are your target audiences? So think about people who may have already used your product and services. That's good. That could be A and B. And then push yourself. Who are C and D? Who are the other people that I haven't targeted yet, but I really need to? And especially over the last year, that may have changed quite considerably. There may be people that you're targeting online that you wouldn't have been able to reach outside of the digital arena, because geographically they're more remote from you, for example. So 1 minute starts now. I'm going to talk through the minute, but write down at least 4, but it might be that you've got loads and you can come back to this and get more and more specific. So you can think about age groups, 18 to 25, 35 plus. You could even think about an international audience or national audience. Think about people that know your product and services, people that don't know your product and services, that are completely fresh to it. I'm going to have a quick check in the chat. Feel free to write down any of your thoughts and who you're going to be targeting. If you're a local business, that's great, and you can focus on your local audience. But also think about what that reach could be if you are online. Do you want to be able to mail out your product to people that are slightly further afield? In which case, you might want to expand your audience. You have 15 seconds left. And again, this is the kind of exercise where you need to come back and obviously reflect after you've listened to the whole session and come back and do this properly. But this gives you'll have these memory joggers written down. Okay, your time is up. So I've got some homework for you. persona profiling. If you haven't done persona profiling before, it's a really good way of thinking about your target audience and who they are. So what it does is it gives you an idea of a sort of visual of who a person is. If you say that I'm targeting females between 35 and 55 who may have children and live within 30 miles of my business, you can then say, right, I'm going to give that person a name. That name is whatever you want it to be. Penelope Parent, for instance. Their age, 30. Location, Norwich, for instance. Job title, marketing manager. And you can go through, if you think about who that person is in just a little bit more depth, what you do is when you're writing content, whether it's digital and traditional, actually, you've got that person in mind, and it's a far better piece of content you write because you're writing human to human. If you're not thinking about your audience in terms of humans, then sometimes people can get quite mechanical. Persona profiling is not a new thing. It's been around for ages, and so feel free, if you want to Google persona profiling, there are templates, loads of templates available for you, and you can go into that. But I really recommend that you do that as a bit of homework after this session, because if you do one persona from each of your target demographics, all of your stakeholders of your business, then you will just be far clearer in what you're going to be saying, and just the quality will be much better. Okay, so you've thought about your objectives and you've thought about your target audience. So you know why you want to say something, why you're promoting via digital marketing, and you know who you want to promote to. But you don't necessarily know where the customers are, where your target audience are in their own customer journey. So this is a really useful demographic that sort of shows you, graphic that shows you all the different touch points that a person could have. And we all know that the world is very noisy now. There are lots of touch points and lots of communications everyone's getting. So the top half of this slide is all the digital touch points. And then at the bottom, you've got all of the physical touch points. So physical touch points being physical mail through the letterbox, going into a shop, call centers, all of that kind of stuff, traditional things. And then with digital, you've got social media, you've got websites, you've got live chat, you've got Google searches, all of that kind of stuff. And through the middle, you can see the arrow, and that goes from awareness. People are becoming aware of your product. And that could be because they've searched something on Google and you popped up, or they've heard an interview on the radio, or you become aware of Social Bee because you're in a conference, whatever that initial awareness is. And then people go into a consideration. Do I want to buy your service? Do I want to buy your product? Then they go through to a purchase. They've made a decision, and then they experience that product or service, and then hopefully they come back. So this shows you all of the possible digital touch points and physical touch points throughout that process. And it's a good idea to reflect on this and sort of go through and go, which are the areas where I want to impact that process, that journey? Do I want to do paid? Do I want to do social? Do I want to do direct mail? What's right for my target audience? And then when you're thinking as online only, I'd like you to think, instead of it just being a straight line, I want you to think of it as a cyclical process. And because you don't want people just to go into sale and then that's it, you want people to keep purchasing back. So if you look up at the top, you've got prospects and awareness. People become aware, then they evaluate whether they want to use your product or service. They go into the selection and decision, then the purchase, and then inside you've got this inner loyalty loop, and that's existing customers where they come back and evaluate. Now, interestingly, you don't know where your customers are in this journey. So it could be that you're talking to people on digital that are in the awareness stage. They could be existing customers. They could be in the evaluation stage. They could be in the purchase stage, decision stage. You don't know. So what you need to do when you're putting digital marketing content together is think about all the different places that people could be in the customer journey and make sure you've got information that's relevant for them. And they might be making decisions at different points in the day, week, year, month. So when you think about your target audience, think about the tailoring the information. An example I have is for the holiday sector. When people are deciding or when people are looking at what holidays they want, office workers generally look for holidays in their lunch period because they're bored, they're in their booths, they're in their grey offices, and they want some excitement, they want to be inspired. So they do lots of, between 12 and 2, they do lots of Googling and searching for holidays, whether that's hotels, package holidays, whatever it is, they're looking for that inspiration during their lunchtime period. But as a generalization, they make their decisions, their purchase decisions, in the evenings when they might be back home with the person they will go on holiday with. So if you're the holiday sector, you might want to put more awareness, evaluation, selection, decision kind of information out during the day. So say you're doing a social media post, it might be, we have an amazing hotel with beautiful food and wonderful views, those kind of inspirational things around lunchtime on social media. But you might want to send an email in the afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, saying, we've got 2 nights for the price of 1, ready for that evening purchase decision. Whereas if you are a bar, for instance, people might be deciding to go to your bar on Fridays. So you want to put more information about your bar on a Friday. And on Mondays, people aren't really thinking about their weekend yet, maybe from Wednesday onwards. So there are lots of different things that you need to think about. And maybe you've got cyclical things throughout the year, people making purchase decisions in the summer versus Christmas. So it seems complicated, but if you break down what your customers are doing throughout the year or throughout the week, it can help you to tailor the kind of information that you want to put online. And when you're creating content, think about why your target audience would want to listen to you. What are their competitors saying to them? Develop messages that appeal to them but are significantly different from your competitors, and always be engaging. And think about creative ways to convey your messages. There's got to be a vision. What's the vision of the brand that people can buy into? Are you a local amazing business? Are you scaling up and you want to bring people along that journey? Are you incredibly niche and people buy into that? Do you have big personalities you want to sell? What is that vision of who your brand is and what your brand is, so people can buy into that? Repeat what works and review what doesn't. And there is this sweet spot between marketing objectives, what you want to say, and what the human need is. So have a think, like that customer journey, what do people want to hear and need to hear from you? Sometimes they need to hear about pricing. Sometimes they need to hear that you're there to support them, the customer service role. And so think about what they need to hear and then what you want to tell them, and put the two together and find that sweet spot. Because the last thing you want to do is shout at people, talk at people. You want to have valuable content that you're putting out on digital. I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is reference for you after the session. These are all the different types of content that you could put out. And what you want to make sure you do is you're mixing things up. So sometimes do customer reviews, sometimes do a competition if that's relevant for your business, put some images out, do an email newsletter, but make sure you're not doing the same thing each time, because if you do the same thing each time, people will get used to that style of content. Oh, it's another infographic. And they won't think that the content is significantly different, and they'll switch off. So mix it up a little bit and reflect back, look at what you've done in the last 6 months and think about how you can improve it and you can do it even better next time. And then you want to drive engagement, because ultimately we want long-term relationships from your customers. You don't want that one sale, you want them keeping coming back. So think about what your customers need for that inner loyalty loop. It might be that you want to offer Q&A sessions that are relevant to your industry. It might be so people have help with how to use your product or use your product more deeply. So for example, if you have a food product, it might be people just consume that product, but they don't know that they can add it to different recipes. If you are a technical brand, it might be that people know one part of your service, but they don't know the other areas. And so it's an opportunity to upsell and encourage more purchases. upload videos and images because they have far more engagement online than just straight copy. Start discussions and ask questions. There are lots of different things you can do to make your content really interesting. I've got your next exercise, 1 minute. I want you to think about your audience and what they want to know, need to know from your brand. So think about those target audiences that you identified earlier, write them down, and then next to them, what do they need to know? If they are a parent, for instance, they might need to know that your product is safe for children under 10. If they have a car, they might need to know that your venue has a good car park. You know, it really depends on your business, but I want you to write down 4 things that your target audience need to know from you. And once you start thinking about what valuable content you can give them, what they might find valuable, you can start hooking your sales pitches into that kind of content. So your minute starts now. The reason this kind of exercise is important is because on digital, people have so much noise around them. They don't want to hear sales pitches. Old world, you could do sales pitches, and there was some kind of feedback, which is great. But nowadays, people have this noise. They really want to cut through to the stuff that's valuable to them. So to separate yourself and to show that your business understands their customers, this is the kind of exercise that really helps. There have been a couple of questions about the slides. Yes, the slides will be shared afterwards, so you don't need to write down the content within them. They'll be shared as a PDF from Tech East afterwards. Why are radio and TV physical? Good question. I guess technically they're not physical, but they're not perceived as digital because they're not you as a content producer being in control of them. You're in control of your website, you're in control of your social media and your email, whereas TV and radio involve external organizations, and they're just a more traditional way of consuming content. But I appreciate as TV becomes more digital and terrestrial doesn't exist anymore, yes, they will go up into that digital area. Thanks for that question. You've got 15 seconds left. I've had a question about email marketing. I'm going to be covering email marketing in a little bit. Okay, I hope you found that exercise interesting. And again, go back and reflect at the end of the session and fill in some gaps, because you won't be able to put everything in 1 minute, but it gives you a taster of the kind of things you need to be thinking about when you're putting your content, your digital marketing plan together. And then hopefully at the end of this, what you can do is, once you've thought about your objectives, your audience, your content, then when it comes to the actual platforms, you sort of know what to do. So those are the different elements of a digital plan. So once you've gone through this session, you will actually have all the elements you need in order to put your digital marketing plan together confidently, knowing that you're not missing anything. So we're on to the platforms. As I said, website is that core element of your digital marketing strategy, and we can do days and days just on getting the perfect website. But just as a couple of things for you to be aware of when you're putting your website together, you need to make sure that you've got security certificates. So if you look up on the top left-hand side of this slide, you can see it's HTTPS. You need to make sure that you've got that S, and that's through a security certificate. If you're still HTTP, then Google will push you down in the rankings, and you won't be so visible. And it's not, and you'll also many people won't be able to access your website if they've got different firewalls. So there's a bit of housekeeping there. You can see on the top right, I've just realized this is a blatant advertisement for Social Bee. I apologize. That's not what I was meaning to do. But top right, you can see that there's an easy way of accessing email and telephone, and you could put your social buttons up there as well. because people read left to right, whether that's traditional or on digital. So you need to have the main information top left and people move to the right. So logo top left, contact details top right. And even if they don't scroll down and click on any other pages, they've got that main information. And then you want to make sure that your navigation is really clear. If you find it easy and intuitive, that's great, but you know your business. So make sure you are asking people that don't know your business so well, whether it's easy to go through and find the products and services and journey through the website. So just keep asking people every so often whether people find your website intuitive. You can see along here, we've got very simple navigation. You can see services, training, the right keywords for what our business is. So if you have a shop, you need to have shop up there, buy now, those kind of things. If you've got different services, put them up and make sure there's always an about us and contact us so people can get more information. And then as you scroll down, you need to think about call to actions, CTAs, and you need to pull them out because people don't have a lot of time. They might look at your web page for 30 seconds, 45 seconds. You need to make sure what you want them to do is very obvious. So if you look here, we have got two great big orange buttons, and it's not subtle, but you can't be subtle when it comes to digital. We want people to call us, so there's speak to a digital marketing expert, and then we want people to join our training courses, so there's a great big orange button for that. So think about what your objectives are. How do you want to influence people to act? Whatever that answer is in your objectives will inform you of what you put in your call to action buttons on your website. So you're beginning to see how they link through. And then as you scroll down a website, there could be primary information, secondary information, tertiary information, depending on what the priorities are within your business. But just make sure it's super easy and treat people as if they're idiots. Because their attention span is very small digitally. They're not idiots, clearly, but they have no time. People don't have time, so you have to sort of treat them in an idiotic way, if you like. They have, make it very, very easy to see information. Anything that's complicated won't work. And if people have to click more than 3 times to get to what they want, you've probably lost them. So do a 3-click check. Can they get to what they need to within 3 clicks? 1 click is ideal, but 3 is like the absolute maximum. Onto social media. What I've got here is a slide on just saying some people are having trouble accessing maybe, but just put in the chat if you're having access issues. So social media, I put a couple of slides together, one slide on each of the major platforms. And it gives you a little flavor of what the different characteristics are if you're not familiar with these platforms. So no matter what the platform is, you have to do your social media housekeeping. Think about your profiles and about us sections. So this example is from Facebook. Do you have a really easily recognizable logo so people can guess straight away that it's your brand? If you are a local business like a farm shop or a pub or a restaurant, you might want to have the picture of the outside of your building, just so it's really easy for people to go, oh yeah, that's the pub I passed. But if you're not a venue business, it needs to be your logo. Think about filling in your About Us section and your profiles really clearly with who you are and the same kind of content as you have on your website. And then it means that when people find you and they go through to your information, it's just intuitive and it's easy, and it'll help with your SEO. I'm sure more information in that SEO deep dive. Always think about your audience and putting content together for your audience and your CTAs. Don't just put a lovely picture up, saying, this is X, whatever your product service is, come and see us at your website, give us a call, whatever it is. Because it's lovely having conversations and great visuals on social media, but if you don't have your call to actions, you're not doing justice to your business, because this isn't personal, this isn't having fun on social media. This is a business channel, and you need to treat it as such. So always have that call to action. Facebook. With Facebook, it's all about community. You need to add content in which is showing the humans of your brand, targeting other, sort of hashtagging people and tagging people that are part of that community. So you can see there's an example here from the ACCA. We've identified 7 vital qualities for success. Take our test. This is something where people might feel that they get a piece of valuable content after they've taken the test. With the aeroplane one, you can see Virgin Atlantic, you can see there's a question, they're starting a conversation. And then you can see in the mobile example, there's a live video, which is showing the humans behind the brand. So you can see 3 different communication styles on Facebook here. But the ultimate thing you always need to think about is utilizing your community, asking questions, getting conversation going in the comments, and then Facebook will prioritize you in people's news feeds. If you're not getting that community interaction, you're going to be deprioritized by Facebook and you'll find the traction really hard. With Instagram, it's slightly different. It's all about showcasing. The focus is on your visuals. So you need to showcase your products, showcase your brand values, and showcase your humans. So there's an example here from 2 wedding flower shops. And I thought this was interesting because they sell almost the same product. They're almost the same business. But if you look at the 2 different ways that they are putting their images across, they're both beautiful, but they're showing different sides of their business. One is showing the table decorations and the other one is showing the bouquets. So whilst it's the same business that has exactly the same products, you might, from the one on the right, you might buy a bouquet, 30 quid, 50 quid, something like that, at a couple of, can't remember what they're called, cortages. But the one on the left, you might be inspired to go, wow, look at that big table decoration. I'm going to spend 2 grand on flowers. I'm going to take that off my dress budget and spend it on flowers. It's inspiring in a completely different way. So think about aspirations and think about upselling, as well as that overall brand look and feel. For Twitter, it's important to be timely. Now, I put these 2 innocent drinks posts in here to show you that they're from 2008, but I think they're brilliant, and they're retweeted still, and I've seen them retweeted this week, this year, which is why I wanted to show. If you get the content right, it will keep being reposted, which is really good. That's what you want. So Innocent Drinks, it's vegan week. We've got a new dairy-free range. So they've posted something during a particular time, and the same for the Halloween one, which has got a bit of humor. Innocent Drinks is light-hearted, friendly drinks brand. Obviously, it's been bought out now, so it's not quite as friendly as it used to be, but you know they've clearly scaled up well. So think about what's relevant to your audience. Is there a food week or a back British farming or or even Christmas time? What are the sort of things that are happening in your audience's lives that you can hang information off for Twitter? Because if you're not timely, it's not worth it. Next one, LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is all about B2B, business to business. Think about if you are a consumer brand, you might want to communicate with your supply chain on LinkedIn, but apart from that, you're very unlikely to capture consumers. So think about if you're a B2B brand, LinkedIn is definitely for you. You need to be professional, you need to add value. So this example from a consultancy that I'm involved with, this is very relevant and timely, obviously, to now. The current COVID pandemic has presented a huge challenge to society. Read the latest blog on how vaccines work. It's interesting. It's showing that the organization has got knowledge. It's showcasing that knowledge, but it's also adding value to the customers. So think about how you can use your professional experience and skills and show that off in LinkedIn. And Pinterest. Pinterest is the exact opposite to LinkedIn. It is B2C. It's all about the consumers. It's all about visuals, and it's looking great. but you need to think target audience. The female Pinterest use is 79.5% and male Pinterest use is 20.5%. So if you're a male brand, if you're targeting men, Pinterest is not for you. If you are interior design, if you're food, if you're dieting, if you're weddings, anything like that, Pinterest is your place. You need to be very, very constant with your Pinterest information and putting boards together. But if you've got a lot of time, Pinterest works very, very well for those visual B2C brands. And YouTube. YouTube is the second largest search engine, and it processes more than 3 billion searches a month. So you need to think of it almost like another Google. It can really bring your business to life. It's great for search engine results, and it's about producing useful content. So this example here is from Garden Life Log Cabins. Obviously, log cabins are having an extremely big burst of profitability at the moment, because lots of people are doing home offices or having more recreation space in their gardens. But it means that there's an awful lot of competition. So Garden Life Log Cabins, this is an older video, but it shows you the kind of thing that you can do. People might have just got an old summer house and they're trying to renovate it, or they've just bought a new summer house, or they're just Googling what to do with summer houses. And you've got here a how to add roof shingles to a summer house. And how-to videos are just brilliant for YouTube, because people search how to change a tire, how to camp in Norfolk, how to dog walk in the East Anglia. You know, there are lots of different ways that people are asking questions and asking advice. So if you've got the kind of brand where you can add a bit of value like that, the content will really work in your benefit. You'll get a lot of views, and it reflects well on you because it makes you look like you care about your audience. And it's about that engagement and social engagement over time that really deepens the relationships that you have with your customers. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of platforms, but hopefully it shows you that there are different characteristics of each platform. So you need to find the platform that suits your business and suits your audience. And always have a listen. Go on a platform, see if your audience is there. If you can't find them, don't do it. But if you see that there's a lot of chatter around on a particular platform that's relevant to your business, jump on board and be a part of it. Now with video content, I've got a couple of little slides. If you're thinking about YouTube, or you're thinking about putting video on your website to give more dynamic content, have a think about how you're adding value. I've got an example here from Yo Valley, where they're putting lots of recipes in. Think about how to give your customer a window into your brand. Customers love to see human content, and especially at the moment where we're all slightly separated and a lot of hospitality and tourism places are closed or just doing takeaway or on a restricted service. Think about how you can add that face-to-face content, because we all need eye contact. We all need to see other people's faces to really get that engagement going. So if you can get a personality within your business to show off a product, that can be really powerful for getting people to get to that point of purchase into loyalty. And then you've got that video content that you can repost and repost over and over again. So lots of people watch explainer videos, how-to videos, and they generate a huge amount more shares than on social than an image. So whilst videos can take a little bit more time to put together, that planning and preparation will really pay off when it comes to implementing and getting traction on digital. You get a lot more traffic from searches if people are searching on Google, and there's a much bigger chance of you actually getting a purchase at the end of it. So have a think about video, and I'll go into blogs in a second, but I'm seeing a shift at the moment from reading blogs into video. So if you have an existing blog, think about whether you can have a couple of snippets of video within the blog, or whether you might want to readdress the weighting of where you spend your time, video into blogs. And storyboard, if you haven't done a video before, use a storyboard template like this, and you can just Google storyboards, and then there are loads around. Find a template that suits you. Just sketch out what you might do for a video, and it's a really nice way of planning. And blogs. So the power of blogs. You can have blogs on your website, or you can be a guest blogger on other websites. So think about whether you want to host your own or be a guest. But websites with blogs have 67% more leads. This is across B2B and B2C. They have more indexed pages on Google and on Bing and Yahoo, and a lot more inbound links. That means people coming into your website from other places, maybe other websites referencing your blog, for instance. So think about blogs and think about whether you've got time to put blogs together. If you do a blog, you need to be constant, whether it's once a week or once a month. You need to make sure that there's a regularity, and think of it like a series. But blogs could be really powerful for your brand. And I've got, I think, your last exercise, your last 1-minute exercise. I've just done a whistle-stop tour of various different platforms that you can put your objectives, audience, and content ideas into. So has there been anything that you've just thought, oh, I could do this for my brand? If so, make sure you write it down. This is your 1 minute to write that down, because you could be back at the office checking your emails and you'll just forget that idea. So your minute starts now. Write down 3 content ideas, and if you've got time, what format that would be, whether it's social media, video, image, blog, whatever it is, write that down, and then it's something you can put on your things to do list when you get back to your day to day. I've had a question about Google and YouTube. I thought the others had dropped into disuse. The thing about Google is the biggest search engine, but Bing has about 20% of overall searches. So don't forget Bing. I think as more people are using Microsoft products, I'm thinking big offices, they get Bing by default on their computers. It's their homepage. So yes, Google is big and YouTube is big, but Bing, 20% is still a large enough margin of your overall internet searches to consider Bing. But if you're doing something right for Google, it'll be probably right for Bing as well. Okay, you've got 15 seconds left. So with your content ideas, make sure you're thinking about objectives, what your objectives are, what your audience is, the platforms, and then the content should just flow, because you know why you're saying something, who you're saying it to, where it needs to go, and then it's just done. I'm making it sound simple, but the idea of digital marketing deep dives is to spend the effort on the planning, why you're doing it, who you're doing it for, then the implementation becomes easy. A lot of companies, and this is a majority of companies that I speak to, don't do that planning up ahead. They just crack on with putting things on their platforms, and they actually find it harder because they can't work out what to say, or they burn out. But if you know why you're doing it, you can keep that focus. With email marketing, I'm going to touch on this just for one slide. Email marketing is a great tool if you have an existing audience. So have a look and see whether you've got a distribution list. If you've got a database of emails and you're allowed to email them, think about data protection and GDPR, then email marketing can be a really nice tool. But think about what you want to say, because if you send one email out, mass email out, that is not seen as relevant or is a bit too salesy or hits the mark, all of your others will probably not be opened by your audience. So when you send an email that is a marketing email, make sure it is as relevant, timely, focused as possible. And then, because your aim is to build up a reputation of having valuable emails. So there are a few different sort of styles you can have. If you are a sort of slightly more jazzy brand, that you're maybe a high street retail brand, you might want to go for something towards the right-hand side, which has got more colors and more tiles. If you are a B2B brand, and there was a safety brand that came up that set a low at the beginning. I can't remember your name, apologies. But if you're working in something that is more that is more sensible, if you like, B2B, you might want to have something more like the center template, which just feels slightly less salesy. And you might, if you want to do a dear first name, best regards, kind regards, then your name, make it feel more like a letter, a traditional letter, and people feel like it's more of a one-to-one communication. So think about the right style for your emails, but also think about your demographics. So you've got those 5, 6, however many different segments of your audience. Think about, don't send, if you have the resource, don't send them all the same email. If you can tweak your email for each of those audiences, maybe tweak the subject so it seems more relevant for those different segments, you will find your open rate is much higher. So always think about segmentation and targeting with digital to reduce the noise and add value. And then what you should see over time, you can look at your open rates and say, well, these people are opening, these people aren't. And this is where you get into the sort of automation side. These people are always opening my emails, so I'm going to prioritize them. These people never open my emails, so I'm going to cut them out or try and communicate with them in a different way. And you can do email marketing through various different channels. There's MailChimp and other platforms that can help you. If you've got Salesforce or a CRM database, you can often email through your CRM. If you've got integration with your CRM, customer relationship management database, then you can link your customers with who's opening the emails, and you get some really good stats about who's engaging with your brand. So do the analytics, look at the stats to really inform your decisions of who you're emailing. And make sure that if someone clicks unsubscribe, you respect that, because otherwise you can get into trouble. I've got some content top tips that I'm not going to go through now, but they're for you to reflect on later on. But think about quality over quantity. And if you can get both, then that's ideal. Now, onto planning and schedules. I've said an awful lot in the last hour, and it's impossible to do it all just in your brain. So unfortunately, it goes down to a content calendar of some kind. And I use an Excel spreadsheet. There are online platforms like Content Cal, or there's a content calendar on Hootsuite, for instance. So there are different platforms that you can use. Sometimes a trusty Excel spreadsheet just is the simple and best option. If you plan out your year, your week, your month, you can hang content based on that cyclical profile of what people want, and it makes sure that you don't have any gaps in your content. And you can see, you can put down which platforms you're in. We've got a color code here, if you like. So say purple is social media, and green is email marketing, for instance. So you can see where there are gaps, and you can fill in and plan better. So again, it's that planning up front can help you with that implementation. And measurement. What you know can't hurt you is the exact opposite of the truth. If you don't know whether something's working, you have no idea if you're causing more harm than good. So make sure that you're looking at your measurement and look for actionable insights. None of us have very much time in the day, so you need to think about what's relevant for you. So an example here on this is Instagram. This is the kind of stats you can get on Instagram. You get great stats on Google Analytics for your website, and you get great stats from email marketing, as I mentioned, platforms like MailChimp. But this one's from Instagram. Now, if you have decided you are targeting men that are over 55 retirement age, and then you look at your stats, you can see that your digital campaign has failed. If, however, you are targeting women that are between 25 and 34, your campaign has absolutely hit the mark. So stats don't say whether things are right or wrong. They say whether they're right or wrong for your business. So have a look at what's at the stats, but only look at what your objectives are. If you don't really care what country they're in, don't look at the countries area. If you don't really mind when they're contacting you, don't look at that area, because we don't have enough time. But tweak based on those actionable insights, and then respond to the stats. You can see here on the right-hand side, followers. It's when they're active. This graph is when people are active online. And you can see that there's a sort of peak around 8 or 9 p.m. So it might be that you want to schedule content onto Instagram between 8 and 9 p.m. and you'll capture more people. So that's an example of how you can take the insight and action something afterwards. And agility. Move with your market and listen to change. So I did a course probably 2 years ago with a couple of tourism brands in Norwich and Norfolk. And one of them was a campsite in Norfolk. And they put loads of work into talking about camping in Norfolk. And it was from a keyword perspective, it looked great. They were talking about how amazing it is to camp in Norfolk, all of this sort of stuff, and it was great. However, at the time, nobody wanted to camp in Norfolk. That wasn't what people aspired to. They might be looking for camping ideas, but they didn't know they wanted to camp in Norfolk, because that's not what people think about straight away when they think of Norfolk. They might think of Sunny Honey, Cromer, Sheringham, Norwich, but they didn't aspire to camp in Norfolk, sadly. So, but what people were searching for online was dog walking holidays. Where is good to camp? And so that the companies realized that their audience didn't know that camping in Norfolk was a thing, was something to aspire to. So they started putting content out on digital, on their website, on social, about great walks with dogs, holiday walking with dogs, pubs that accept dogs, great things to do with kids when you're camping. So they put this sort of initial awareness campaign around about what the benefits were of having a holiday in Norfolk. And then they hung the campsites bit off that. What's interesting is that everybody's looking for campsites or camper van sites and staycations. So what was true 2 years ago, and the fact that people weren't searching for Norfolk campsites, it's absolutely not the case now. People are searching for any campsites, or were over the summer, any campsites that were free. So actually, you have to be agile and listen to the audience and go, right, well, the market has changed totally. And I have gone from being low brand awareness to really desirable. So I need to plug the fact that we've got space. We've got really great campsites in Norfolk, or campsite in Norfolk. So you've got to listen to the change and be prepared to adjust and be open to new markets. Because especially with tourism, we've all seen hospitality brands that have had to start doing takeaways when they weren't before, or they've started doing online things that they haven't done before. So you've got to remember to be agile and pivot your business. And the great thing about digital marketing is you can do that very, very quickly. Within a day, you can change what you're doing because it's not printed. It's digital, so you can pivot and change straight away. And an example I've got is Wild Night Distillery. For those of you that were in Rise, you'll recognize this, but I just loved them when they were speaking. So I wanted to highlight this organization. So this is a couple who had a very traditional retail model for their spirit brand. And what they realized when at the end of March, when all of the shops closed, is they lost their route to market straight away. So they went online. And they played around with different things. They knew nothing about social media and websites and things, but they were listening to their audience. They were constantly tweaking and being agile with what they did. And they've just had the most phenomenal results. So have a search for Wild Night Distillery and see what you think. But look here, they've got thinking of Christmas, ? Bit engaging. We have wonderful gifts. That's relevant. This was, it's relevant to now. And then you've got, they've listened to the fact that their audience is going into non-alcoholic drinks as well. A lot of people are thinking about whether they want to be, they're coming out of lockdown a chunk or a hunk. And so people are thinking about maybe having non-alcoholic stuff, doing a bit more exercise. So they listened to that. It was market research on social media, and they've produced non-alcoholic drinks as well. So have a look at Wild Night Distillery, have a look at your competitors, and see how people are pivoting and changing and using interesting content to target their audiences on digital platforms. So in summary, I hope that at the end of this, you see that we can go through that process and you can use these slides to put a really decent digital marketing plan together. Think about all of the different areas of digital marketing: SEO, email, website, social media, but think about your objectives. What do you want to get out of it? What's right for your brand? What is your own particular audience? What the right content is for you and for them, because it's a two-way communication to make it valuable for both parties. The right platforms for you to be on, measurement, and then constantly improving. And as I said, the wonderful thing about digital marketing is you can constantly improve. It's not a case that you do something and it's out and that's it. You can constantly change and be agile. We've got a newsletter with Social Bee if you want more hints and tips, and we also have a bit of free consultancy if you want it afterwards. I'm sorry to do a sales bash, but you know it's what we're here for. And if you've got any questions, we'll have them now. I'm going to have a quick check on chat and see what questions have come up. Feel free to use the chat function yourself now.
I think before we just we go into the questions, I'm going to, on behalf of everybody who's been tuning in, I'm going to give a sort of virtual round of applause to Edwina.
Thank you.
Sorry, that doesn't sound quite like it should, but these are odd. These are odd times.
Yep.
Edwina, really fantastic. My gosh, I've been writing lots of things down, but yes, this is now the time for Q&A. So we have had quite a few, I think, questions in the chat, and we've had one in the actual Q&A function. So please do, if you haven't posted a question, and I'm sure you'll be bursting with questions now, please do post that in chat or Q&A, whichever it is, and Edwina and I will pick them up. But perhaps, well, can I pick one out just because I thought it was quite interesting. So there is a question here about, and it's going back to the point you just discussed about measurement, and this is from A. I'm not sure whether A is, I'm not sure what A stands for, but from Fresh Herb Salt. Hello, A from Evoli from Fresh Herb Salt. Got an employee who promotes the business on behalf of the business through social. And I think there's a question here about, you know, is there some kind of code you can set up on PayPal to track that individual's sales activity? So presumably this is linked to things like commission and measuring how your team is performing and how that's translating into activity.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. First thing I would say, if you have employees that are selling on your behalf on social, that's really powerful because people prefer to listen to individuals. It feels more real than brands. Make sure you have a social media policy, because just in case they do something wrong, you want to make sure that your business is covered. So social media policy, and if you Google social media policy, there are loads of templates that will help you. What you can do, it depends on the platform, but ultimately no, if they've got an individual account that's not linked to your business, you won't be able to see a user experience, the user journey go through. But I would suggest that maybe they have their own code, and they promote that code either as a hashtag or just say, use this code if you are ordering, if you've seen this post and order. It's a manual process, but it's a really good idea to track that. And also think about the post-sale communication you do. If you have a thank you for ordering or confirmation email, ask the question there and say, how did you hear about us? Do you like our brand? Make sure that you can continue that conversation on email post-purchase, and you could add that conversation in. So unfortunately, no, it's not straightforward.
Okay, so a question I picked up from Andy, which is obviously related to video, and you've talked, Edwina, very convincingly about you know, the power of video content, explainer videos, the fact that the sort of share rates for video as opposed to, say, images and so on will be much higher. And I think this is a question probably from the point of view of when you're choosing the platform where you're going to distribute your video, sort of pros and cons of YouTube versus Vimeo. Clearly YouTube's getting a lot of traffic and Vimeo I sort of would normally associate with perhaps the higher quality professional video. But any comments on the pros and cons of those two video hosting platforms?
Yeah, Vimeo is wonderful. I really love it as a video producer. And I create quite a lot of content, video content using Vimeo. You're right, it's generally used by people, by the videographers, rather than by the audience. You want to go to where your audience is, and they may already be on YouTube. Chances are they are already on YouTube. So you need to go to where they are rather than having to try and drag them to where you are. So I would say always go with YouTube. It's just the biggest.
And then
that was a very quick answer.
No. It's I think it's a pretty good answer. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not possible to export something that you've created and posted on Vimeo into YouTube, or is it?
Big no. Two conflicting brands, competitors. They don't like that. What you can do is you've got the video link on YouTube, and you can and on Vimeo, and you can use those on social. So you can post that hyperlink onto your Twitter or onto your Facebook posts. You can do that to bring people through. But always be aware of conflicting brands. So Facebook are enemies of Twitter, so don't cross-pollinate between the two. Vimeo and YouTube are enemies, so don't cross-pollinate between the two, and you'll be penalized probably. They don't say it, but I think you are. So just stick to YouTube and use Vimeo for video production, but then download that image, download that video and upload it into YouTube. That's where your audience is.
Right. That's all clear then. Great. Really good. So a really good question from Louis Clabban, which is about kind of getting buy-in at board level to a digital marketing strategy. So without wanting to kind of, because obviously we can't get Louis up on screen to elaborate on that. But let's say, for example, one is working in an organization that may be a little bit more traditional, perhaps hasn't fully embraced digital marketing, or has only embraced certain aspects of it. And as a manager or as an employee, you know, you've got a really strong passion that this is something that the organization should be doing, but perhaps where there's, I don't know, different perceptions of the value of it. Is it proper marketing or not? I mean, what sort of conversations, what sort of influencing conversations would you suggest that manager would be having kind of upwards into their board?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and so many people have the same problem. There are two things that that boards care about, and it's return on investment and return on engagement. So what if you can talk in those terms, that's really helpful. So the wonderful thing about digital is that there is analytics for everything. If you can assign a value to a click-through, so for example, somebody has clicked on buy now, that's worth X amount of pounds. You can see a return on investment. So if you can say we have got X amount of sales through our website, or X amount of bookings, or X amount of calls, you can assign a value to those, and then you can start getting some return on investment kind of statistics. And that's really what the board care about, because they want to know that you're not spending time that's irrelevant for the business. So, but what you need to be aware of is a lot of digital is engagement and chatting and comments, and it's a long-term investment, just like events. So I find it's very good to make an analogy of events. If you put on an event, you don't know if you're going to make a sale at that event, or someone learns about you and they actually buy something from you in 2 years' time. Events are very hard to get analytics from, and social media is very similar. If you're just commenting and building up an audience and building up a community, how do you put value on? So think of return on engagement, and you're getting X amount of likes, tweets, shares, and that content is being shared out, and try and show how important that is for getting your brand out there. And also, if you've got smart objectives, that's what your board will want. I'm going to do X amount of posts, X amount of comments, X amount of content within a particular time frame with this objective, with this hopeful result, and they will understand it within that framework. But it is hard, and I would say go small to start with. If you can go, right, I'm going to focus on this area, social media or email. Don't try and do both at the same time. Prove that ROI or ROE, and then you can start building up once they've got a bit of trust in you.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Robin, which is around kind of email and Slack and alternatives to email. Now, I'm not sure whether we're in the realms here of digital marketing, or whether we're just talking about digital kind of communications more broadly. But I mean, I think as you alluded to, Edwina, email marketing is okay if you've got that existing contact database, and it's kind of GDPR compliant because they've made legitimate contact, but it's not a great way to build. It's much harder to build new audiences. I mean, Robin's talking about use of Slack as an alternative to email. In my head, Slack is useful internally within a company or across a distributed team for business. Can it be used for marketing, or is that something else?
I think, yeah, I agree with you. It's an internal communications tool. If you don't have an existing audience for email marketing and you think that that's an area that you want to get into, the best thing to do is think about how you can start capturing those emails. So do people buy a product or a service from you and sign up to something? If they do, can you put a tick box in there saying, I would like to join your newsletter? Do you have maybe a white paper or a vision paper or some kind of technical piece of content that people could download from your website, but they're only allowed to download if they put their email address in, and at the same time they're signing up to email marketing? So think about ways of building up your email, or indeed it might be that you can add your content into other email marketing trying to think of the word, distribution lists. So for example, there might be a media outlet that sends out a regular communication, and you can add some valuable content into it, paid or organic. So it doesn't necessarily, if you don't have a distribution list, think about who does and whether you can piggyback off that distribution list. And especially at the moment with conferences and events not being able to be in the real world, a lot of events organizers are trying to think how they can maximize revenue from virtual events, and selling distribution lists, selling the rights to email people on events distribution lists is a part of that. So maybe contact people and say, if you participate in a regular conference, annual conference for your industry, contact the event organizers and say, is there an email that I could be a part of? And people are very open to those kind of suggestions at the moment, because everyone's exploring different ways of communicating. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Great. Thank you, Edwina. I think we've just got time for one last question, because once we've concluded this bit, Kate de Vries is going to come on and talk about something that will hopefully really build very nicely on this event, Deep Dive, which is a new program that Norfolk County Council are launching. May even be announcing it today. I'm not sure if it's a scoop or whether it's already out there. I think it is already out there. But anyway, so there is a last question. And Valerie, so Valerie Watson-Brown from Local Flavors, hello again, Valerie, has asked a great question about streamlining, because, and I know where she's coming from, if your product is both, or your business has got both B2B and B2C elements, you might find yourself running multiple social media accounts, doing a bit here and a bit there. And there's something about streamlining here. So I suppose now would be a good chance to be a bit like, bold and controversial. Are there any platforms, Edwina, you think in 2020 that businesses should consider dropping because they've kind of they're tailing off just per se? I mean, for example, I would say this year, I've seen a dramatic increase in use of LinkedIn on people's personal accounts for sharing kind of the human stories, and kind of LinkedIn is seems to be booming, but Twitter seems to be going a bit, you know, a bit cooler, just in our experience. That's just my perception. But I mean, Edwina, if you had to drop a platform, how would you go about deciding which one to drop? If you are the ways of streamlining, for example, posting once across multiple platforms that actually work, those kinds of things?
Yeah, definitely there have been some changes in the last year, and some people, Twitter has gone down a little bit for businesses just because it's got very political. It's got political on Twitter. So we might find now the US elections have gone and have stopped, after maybe January next year, that it might readjust the balance a little bit there. But the main thing that has dropped has been the physical world. So whilst this is possibly very obvious that I would say something like this because I'm biased, digital is up everywhere. Because you can't do those physical interactions, people are trying to mimic that online. What I have found is that Facebook has gone down very slightly for larger businesses, but little niche independent businesses are doing far better on Facebook. So if you're small and niche, Facebook communities are, people are kind of rallying around small niche independents, especially in the run up to Christmas. But the larger brands are not doing so well. Whereas LinkedIn, as you said, has just exploded for the B2B arena, because all of the sales reps that used to go out to all of the conferences, events, and trailing and sort of going on the road every day are grounded. So they are all on LinkedIn at the moment, and it's just right for your B2B brand. But the thing that you have to do is just listen, go onto the different platforms, listen and see if your audience is out there, and look at your stats. If you've noticed that there's a massive drop over the last couple of months, drop the platform. If it's not working for you, don't keep going at it. No one has enough time. Pivot and go on to something else.
Wow. Well, I had to say, it's harder to sense this when you're on an online event and you can't see everyone face to face. I get the impression that this has been immensely useful, hugely positive feedback from people who are having to go now. I do want to thank Edwina again for spending the time with us today and doing such a fantastic job on a very big topic. And so on behalf of us and the partners, thank you very much, Edwina. And
thank you, Jim. Thanks.